So now we're going to look at the last group of vertebrate animals, the mammals. So mammal evolution actually started before the time of the dinosaurs. Those synapsid reptiles, if you remember, there were three classes of skulls that we saw in amniotes. And one of them was synapsids, where they had those two temporal fenestra, the two openings in the skull, and they were fused together into one. Early mammal fossils are small. They indicate a lack of developed olfactory smell and auditory hearing abilities. How do we know this? By looking at the skull of these early mammal ancestors, you can actually see the space inside of the skull. Usually we do some kind of injection foam that expands to fill up the inside of the skull. Then when you pull it out, you have a rough idea of the shape of the skull. The areas where in most vertebrates we see the olfactory smell senses and hearing senses located happen to be pretty small. Why is that? Well, we think that this is probably an indication that they were nocturnal. If you're not out in the heat of the day, things don't emit as many smells at night. Temperature goes down, there's not direct sunlight hitting things that would cause them to emit more smells. Hearing, things are quieter, less active at night. There's less to hear at night. Most of the animals that were active during this time period we think were the ectothermic, day-active dinosaurs. They had to be active in the heat of the day. So hearing, less critical if you're active at night. This might account for the development of endothermy in modern mammals. If you're active at night, it's colder. You have to work harder to maintain your internal body temperature, so therefore endothermy is probably a characteristic that started showing up concurrently. To give you an idea of the relationships of all mammals, we have this group down here at the end on our cladogram that is extinct. Notice the little cross there. The cynodonts are some of the oldest known mammalian ancestors. They had the synapsid skull, and they share that characteristic with all of the other mammals. So within the group of mammals, so now we see mammals developing. This is just a synapsid reptile. Now we have prototherians. Proto means first. Theria is the term that refers to mammals. So we'll see theria and several of these names indicating that we're looking at some type of mammal. So the first mammals, notice also extinct, had unique characters of palate, inside the mouth, lower jaw, ribs, and pectoral girdle. So bones similar to what we see in the pelvic girdle that span the connection point for the rear limbs. We see that in the front limbs, which is a characteristic that we have as well. Hair and mammary glands showed up at some point in here. Characteristics that define all mammals. Having hair, which aids in maintaining warmth, among other functions, and mammary glands that provide nourishment to young. Then we get to the extant modern therians. So all modern mammals fit into these three categories. Ornithodelphia, ornitho, bird. So what is it about them that makes them bird-like? They still lay eggs. So three ear ossicles, expanded neopallium cerebral cortex, unique characters of vertebrae and long bones. So three bones in the ear, different characteristics in vertebrae and long bones that make mammals move differently from some of the related reptiles and reptiles in general. And we've got this group that are egg-layings. There's two extant members of Ornithodelphia. We'll talk a little bit about those in a moment. The middle mammals, Metatheria, loss of the eggshell. So we now lose the eggshell and we go to other forms of having young. Unique characters of brain case and ear. So some new developments show up in the mammals and the metatherians. This is your marsupials, your pouch-bearing mammals. Lastly, Eutheria, that means the true mammals. This is a group that now has a placenta. So long gestation period where the growing young stays in the mother until very late, And that long gestation period varies, in some cases very long when we look at animals like human beings, but some it can still be reasonably short, but it is definitely longer than what we see in the pouched mammals. These are members of subclass Synapsida. It's a cynodont on the bottom, and above that is a pelycosaur. I believe that is a Dimetrodon. You may have, if you've ever played with dinosaur toys will often include a Dimetrodon, some sort of pelycosaur that looks like this. They include it as a dinosaur. This guy was actually around during the Permian, well before the dinosaurs were on the Earth. So our synapsid reptile ancestors showed up well before the dinosaurs. This is not a dinosaur, so please don't confuse this. It looks dinosaur-like, and I think most people would probably tell you it's a dinosaur, but it was around before they showed up. Age of mammals. So synapsid mammal ancestors predate the dinosaurs. The first true mammals appeared during the Mesozoic, 160 million years ago during the time of the dinosaurs. So when we say true mammals, we're not talking about synapsid reptiles. Now we're talking about an actual mammal. 160 million years ago. Remember, dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago, which means this is about 95 million years before that asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs. So mammals were around, living underneath and around the larger and dominant dinosaurs. The dinosaurs go extinct because of that asteroid and the resulting climate change that has altered the landscape of the planet. The mammals were able to diversify and grow in number. And we see this happen throughout the history of life on Earth, where climate changes or some other changes cause an extinction of some dominant group, and then when that niche, that ecological niche, is opened up, other things are able to diversify and expand into that territory, whether it's a new food source, it's a new habitat, something changes, and now there is available resources and space to be used by the new dominant organisms. That leads us to the Cenozoic, which is the modern age. The Cenozoic era is what we're in currently. It is now dubbed the Age of Mammals. So we have a time period that is dominated by amphibians, and then all of a sudden climate changes and changes to the ecological landscape allow dinosaurs to take over during the Mesozoic. They dominate the planet for probably the longest time period of any animal's domination, and then we get to the modern age, which is only the last 65 million years, so relatively short compared to the time period that dinosaurs ruled, and now mammals are the dominant life form. What does that mean? Does that mean insects aren't doing really well, arthropods aren't doing really well? No, they are still very successful, but when we are labeling the age after a particular group, it means that they are altering and shaping the ecosystems. They are driving what happens in the ecosystems. And dinosaurs had a dominating effect on what was happening in every ecosystem, much like amphibians did before them and much like mammals do today. Earliest mammals were shrew-like creatures living among the dinosaurs, probably no bigger than a mouse. So these tiny little guys living underfoot during the reign of these, in some cases, giant animals dominating the planet. Moving around, skulking around at night. Again, notice the artist representation here shows a lot of fur because we know at some point mammals developed fur. Again, leading to the idea that we have, as a group, we have endothermy, the ability to maintain warmth. Hang out at night, avoid the megapredators. So going back to this classification scheme that we started in the beginning of this class, kingdom Animalia. Everything in the class is kingdom Animalia. We have worked our way down to phylum Chordata, the last phylum that we cover in the class, of which we deal with subphylum Vertebrata. So this is multicellular, eukaryotic heterotrophs. They have a dorsal nerve cord. That nerve cord is supported by vertebrae, a backbone, and when we get to this group, class Mammalia, we are now talking about those animals that have endothermy, maintain their own body temperature, have hair, and provide milk to their offspring. Mammals as a group include about 5,000 species. They range in size from the 4-centimeter bumblebee bat that lives in New Zealand. This guy is tiny, to the blue whale, which can reach lengths of 29 meters and weigh 176 tons. This is probably not even the largest whale by a long shot that's here in this picture, but blue whales are the largest animal that we know of that has ever existed on the planet. Some dinosaurs were huge. Why are there no giant mammals? So this question is, why do we see some mammals that got pretty large? This kind of rhinoceros, hippopotamus-looking guy was pretty large. In large part, the dinosaurs gained in size because of the rich vegetation and the large amount of foods that they had to ingest in the time period that they existed. When the Earth cooled, there became less plants. The climate changed. The Earth was shrouded in clouds and dust that it caused that climate change. There probably were a lot of plants that went extinct or died off significantly, and that meant there was less food sources for these to support these large animals. Also, bone structure. Bone structure in mammals can support more mass, and we have come to think that dinosaurs, some of the larger dinosaurs, may have had structures similar to the air sacs that we see in birds, that fills them up with some air, aids in respiration, but also takes away some of their density, and their bone structure probably wouldn't have supported the density of tissue the way that mammals have their mass per density. All right, so Earth's land mammals by weight. So this graphic just kind of gives you an idea of mammals that are around on the planet. And if you can't tell, they're the largest group by weight of mammals. Each one of these boxes representing 1 million tons is by far cattle. What other ones are large? Because in the center we've got humans. There's more mass of cattle on the planet than there are humans. The other large groups that show up on here are pigs, goats, and sheep. Horses is a significant chunk. Those are all livestock animals that we raise on farms. So kind of interesting that we've changed the landscape of mammals on the planet because of what we domesticate. Elephants. A lot of people think, oh, elephants, those are huge mammals. They only occupy that 1 million ton block. So they're pretty small component of the mass of mammal weight on the planet. Characteristic unique to all mammals is that they all feed their young with milk produced by the female's mammary glands. The name mammal comes from mammary glands. It's also the same root that we use to say mama. Mammary glands are glands that produce milk. It is a way of feeding young. Most mammals give birth to live young, and almost all species have hair on their body. Some types of mammals form complex social structures that probably start with this connection between the offspring and the mother. They are intimately connected to their mom for a certain period of time because they are getting their food, nutrition from them. Even those that are egg-laying mammals still produce milk for their young. Unique characteristics of mammals. So mammary glands that produce milk to feed young, hair that regulates body temperature, the diaphragm, which is a muscle located underneath your lungs that allows you to get more oxygen into your lungs. If you are a singer, if you know anybody that sings, we exercise the diaphragm to control breathing when singing, and having 3 middle ear bones, which allow for better hearing. And we'll continue in the next video.